welcome to Brand Retro, the podcast about retro mindset, branding, marketing, and all things that kind of inspire that deep meaning brand retro mindset. Today we're going to talk about kind of one of my secret shames is the sneakerhead concept and how that works and what goes into it for me and what kind of brought me to this place, how it connects back to that branding and retro mindset. And to help me do that is my friend Jenna, who's going to ask me some questions and help me kind of dig into and uncover the backstory behind it, because obviously I live it every day. And like I said, it's a secret shame and not something I talk about very often. So Jenna, welcome.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. I'm excited to be here with Mike. And I can't wait to hear more about how you're a sneakerhead and learn more about this secret love that you have. I'm really interested in it. So I think this is going to be really, really cool. First, Mike, I must know, what's your favorite sneaker that you love?
Actually, this is not a prop. I actually have these, I have a few around my office just so that I can look at them and whatever. But the Air Jordan 3 is my absolute favorite. A lot of people call it, the 1988, they call it the Air Jordan 3. It's the original Tinker Hatfield. But that to me is in case you don't know what it is.
Oh yeah, those are super cool. Those are so cool.
It's actually it's my favorite one just because I love the way it looks and everything, but it's also the one that, Jordan wore in 88 when he won the slam dunk contest, all that good stuff. But it's also one of the first shoes where they dropped the Nike swoosh. So when they first came out, I remember it being such a big thing and such a big departure from anything Nike had done before. And it was kind of the start of, many trends, but at the time it was vastly different.
That's really cool. And nothing like a good Air Jordan. I tell you what, they've been famous since the 80s, right?
Yeah.
That's when they started?
Yep. 1985. And
okay.
I have a brother that's 9 years older than me. And obviously, he's watching sports and coming from a home of three boys, we all played basketball and whatever. So I got kind of exposed to a lot of that stuff, probably at a younger age than most people. So when my brother was 18, I was 9 years old. So he graduated in 1984, which is right when Jordan entered the league. And that's how I kind of got introduced to Michael Jordan. And then obviously through that learned about, the shoes and the catchphrases and all that good stuff.
So I'm guessing you're a huge Jordan fan then.
And I was before he was Jordan, right now, for me, when I talk to people about sports or whatever, which seems to happen a lot, but it's kind of everybody's a Jordan fan. I mean, he's a,
sure.
He's an icon. He's probably one of the best athletes there's ever been. So I think it's pretty commonplace for people to be Jordan fans, but for me, it's a little bit more unique because I was a fan before he was ever that big. And then lucky for me, he turned into be what he is today. But
yeah, huge deal. That's awesome. So when did you buy your first pair of Jordans?
I bought my first pair of Jordans I would have been ninth grade. I got the Air Jordan 4s, and partially because they were expensive at the time. The first couple iterations, like the 85 through 87s, were around that $65, $75 mark. And when they went to the 1988 Jordan, which is the Air Jordan 3 I just showed you, they were up over $100. So again, coming from a home with three boys, my parents were not going to drop $100 on a pair of basketball shoes. So I had to mow yard and save up till I could get the Air Jordan 4s. And that was my first pair. And my parents thought I was completely nuts when I bought them, but for me, it was so worth it. And that actually, which is kind of, again, common now, but I was one of the kids, that I'd wear them outside or wear them to play basketball. I actually wore them for my basketball season that year. But when I got in the house, man, I was right to the sink with the toothbrush and just giving them the love because I knew I needed to make them last because I wasn't, at that point in my life, wasn't buying $100 shoes every day.
Yeah. So at that point when you bought your first pair, was it crazy popular, with your friends at that point? Did they think that they were super awesome, or was it kind of just not to the popularity yet?
Yeah. I mean, they were super popular and definitely in comparison, they were way more popular than anything else at that time. So they were already, there was a gap between regular basketball shoes and Jordans. But in comparison to where they are today, like not even close. And I ran with a bunch of friends who played basketball and whatnot. We all had our favorite players and whatnot. So I think there was a cool factor there in having them, but at the same time, like nobody really cared. I mean, it was kind of like if you were a Magic Johnson guy, you wore those. If you were a Larry Bird guy, you wore Converse or whatever the case may be. But for me, it was like I just couldn't see myself dropping that kind of money on any other shoes but Jordans.
Gotcha. So it started off when you were growing up. Then how did it kind of progress into you being a sneakerhead and you having a collection of Jordans?
Like I said, I couldn't really afford to buy multiple pairs. So whatever pairs I had to take care of them. And the way they used to do them is they would launch basically the black and white version. So they would come out with 4 colorways per Jordan and only one style. Like right now, if you go to a store, you can find 25 different styles of Jordans, from running shoes to basketball shoes to high tops, low tops, whatever. And at that time, they would come out with one style, 4 colorways, and they would do the 2 colorways right at the beginning. And then they would release the other colorways at All-Star break. So depending on when you started your basketball season, what colorways they first launched, like you were kind of limited, like you just couldn't get them. And then once that cycle or that season went through, that was it. Then they moved on to the next year, and there was no retros. There was basically no going back. So every window of opportunity to buy those shoes was like a season. And
Wow.
if they didn't have them after that, then you were just kind of hosed. So that's just the way it was until I was in college. And I happened to be in the mall with some friends and walked by a shoe store, and I swore to God, I just saw some Air Jordan 3s on the shelf. How is that possible? And I was thinking, did they just like keep these? They had these in backstock. Well, what happened? I ran in that store and looked at them, and they were brand new. And I'm like, what is going on? And I talked to the guy, and he's like, yeah, they just came out. They re-released them. They call them retros now. They called them re-releases back then.
Yeah.
So that was in 1985. So it was roughly 8 years later, they started to re-release the Jordans, and they happened to be the Air Jordan 3s. They only released 2 colors. They did the black ones and then the traditional gray. And I had no money at the time, but I bought them. I'm like, I'll eat bologna for a long time. I am definitely going to have these shoes. So I bought one of each. I bought a black pair and a white pair.
Nice.
And that was like my first step into, kind of being addicted to the process. Yeah.
So I don't really know a whole lot about now how they're releasing Jordan. So is it still like a seasonal thing? I know they've brought back a lot of retro things, but is it still kind of like you got to grab it while it's out? Is it more kind of open where you can kind of get it at any time?
They have a season they have a calendar of releases and a season that they follow. But there's the regular stuff, which is like new styles, new models, whatever. And then they have the stuff that is retro release, and everything's limited.
Oh,
now.
really?
If it's one that they've re-released multiple times, the demand, not that it's not high, but it's not as crazy as, probably one they haven't released in a decade. Like when they re-release a certain colorway or a certain style, depending on the popularity of that style, they'll sell out in 5-10 minutes.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
So like on a Saturday morning, they'll launch it, and good luck getting online, good luck getting in the app. But if you are able to get in there, you've got about a 5-minute window to get those shoes. And after that, they're gone. Yep.
Wow. So you say you're a sneakerhead. So now I need you to brag about the sneakers you got. Let's lay it all out on the table. Let's hear what you got.
I honestly don't even know. I have
really.
Yeah. So there are so many, Jordan played for a number of years. So there's a lot of styles and whatever. I primarily stick to just the ones I like. So I have a lot of Air Jordan 1s. I have a lot of 3s, a handful of 2s, a handful of 4s, some 5s, and then some randoms, like some 11s and some different things like that. But I probably have, I'm guessing I have 120-ish pairs.
Oh my goodness.
And I probably have 30 or 40 pair of just Air Jordan 3s from the different colorways to the just, some of them. So you'll get a kick out of this is that when I first started buying, you'd buy one to rock, one to stock.
Mm-hmm.
So you'd buy one to wear, and I never had the heart to wear them. So the idea was to buy one to rock, one to stock, but I ended up stocking both of them. And then I'm like, yeah. So then I would wait for the next round where they would re-release them. And I'm like, now I'm going to buy a pair and wear them. Well, then I couldn't wear it. I just didn't have the heart to do it. So like the ones I showed you, the blue ones, I probably have 6-7 pairs of those that I've never worn.
Oh my goodness. Now, do you wear shoes? Like, do you wear most of them, or are they more of collector items?
I do wear shoes. Yes. I wear some, like there's some that I have to,
right.
But they're always a pair that I have a backup for, or I have ones that I've never worn, but yeah. So when I'm out doing like client meetings or even with friends or whatever, I'm pretty much wearing a different pair of Jordans every time I go out. Whatever. Like you'll like this. I actually have orange ones. So like I'll wear these with my brand stuff. So like if I'm out on a client meeting and it's a Cyberdogz type meeting, I'll actually wear the orange ones just to kind of hook the whole thing up.
That's
and
awesome.
get people. It's a conversation starter, which I find pretty interesting too. Like when I wear, the retro Jordans, whatever, like it's an icebreaker. The clients will, kind of make mention of it and ask questions, and it's just kind of interesting. Yeah.
Now, since Jordans have been out since the 80s, do you still think that they're a kind of a popularity shoe? I know growing up, it was a thing, like to have Jordans. Do you think now in 2020, it's still a thing to have Jordans?
Yeah, I definitely think it is. Obviously, I think the brand and just the NBA, and I think they have squeezed every bit of marketing juice that they possibly could have out of Michael Jordan, the man. So they have made him relevant years and years after he's been done playing for a long time.
Yeah.
And he's still as relevant today as he ever was. And people are still making the comparisons of him to LeBron and Kobe and whatever. And the guy hasn't laced up in over a decade. So I think they've done an amazing job at just keeping it all alive, which you have the young people that adopt it, plus you have the people like me that were kind of alive and aware at the time that, we just keep kind of churning through the legacy of what he built, the shoes, the styles, the memories, all those different things. So I think at some point it'll taper off, but it's going to be a while. I have nephews that are, in their teenage years that, they act like they invented the Jordan because they'll ask, like, hey, did you see my new Jordans? And I'm like, I've got 20 pair of those. So
yeah, they don't even know.
Right. So, I mean, even the younger generation, they think it's new to them, and obviously it's not.
It's so cool that a brand can do that, can just be iconic for that long.
Yeah. And one of the things they've done that's really cool, and it's cool in the way that they've associated themselves, but it's cool in the way that they've marketed themselves, in that they'll do co-brand, inspired Jordans. So if you're a brand lover of, North Carolina, all of a sudden they come out with the Carolina Blue Air Jordan 3s. Well, now I just pulled a whole segment or a whole demographic back into the love of retro shoes. So, I mean, they've been pretty strategic about how they've been able to kind of continue to pull in that younger generation. And I don't know if they even truly understand the legacy behind it, but they're as much a brand lover as anybody else. I mean, they're buying them, hand over fist. So
that's so cool. Yeah. Jordans are awesome. They're always a staple piece. So do you have a pair of Jordans that are like your prized possession? You will never wear them. You will never touch them. They're in some sort of protection. Do you have a pair of Jordans like that?
Well, Air Jordan 3s are my favorites. So I will always maintain a colorway or a color run of those.
Mm-hmm.
That I won't wear them.
Gotcha.
But my one pair, I have a pair of Air Jordan 1s that they're previously worn from the guy I bought them from. But they're Air Jordan 1s, and they're the original Air Jordan 1s. Okay. So they're probably worth somewhere between $1,000 and $2,000. Oh my
goodness.
Like, I just won't wear them because, I mean, they're old. I don't know what would happen, but they're in really, really nice shape. They look almost new. The guy I bought them from actually was a Foot Locker manager, and he was just a sneakerhead at the time, and he was just buying shoes as they came in. Well, because he was a Foot Locker manager, it didn't take him long before he had so many shoes he couldn't wear them all. So he
Right.
just kind of quit wearing them, and him and I cut a deal at one point in my life, and I ended up buying those Air Jordan 1s off him. So
That's so cool. That's so cool. Do you ever think that like from when the shoes were designed in the 80s to where they are now, do you think that the styling has gotten worse, has gotten better, or has just stayed kind of really cool and consistent throughout?
my opinion is that it's just gotten too broad. They do so many kinds now that there's a Jordan for everything, and the only thing that kind of distinguishes them as Jordans is the logo on them. What was kind of nice about those early years, and I don't know when it kind of drifted away from that. I've never really looked into it. But those early years, the shoes were actually designed in conjunction with Jordan. So in 1988 is when they brought in, or it would have been 87 into 88, they brought in Tinker Hatfield, who was a designer and whatnot. And he actually worked with Jordan to really start creating some unique designs and things that, kind of fell into not only the current style, but some of the preferences and just kind of the court demands that, Jordan needed to play his game. So it was cooler when you kind of knew that the input that was going into the shoe was coming from Jordan himself. Where today there's so many. I'm sure he's involved on some level, making some decisions and whatnot, but it's just not as intimate as it once
Right,
was.
right. As far as like, did you play basketball growing up?
Yep. So
As far as it being a performance shoe, do you think it's a better like basketball performance shoe or a better shoe just for style and wearing around?
I think both.
Okay.
I think the technology and everything that goes into that shoe, I think, is every bit as cutting edge as anything else that's out there. I mean, I definitely think they're a top performance shoe.
Right.
Whether or not you're going to score more points or make more baskets or jump higher or whatever, I don't know. That's debatable. But
Yeah.
but no, I think they're fantastic in that they're just a quality shoe. And like I said earlier, with price point, I mean, at the time when I was a kid, there weren't a lot of $100 basketball shoes out
Right.
there. And now if you go and look at basketball shoes, running shoes, whatever, to drop $100-$200 on a pair of shoes is no big deal.
Yeah, it really isn't.
Pretty common. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you have like a favorite color combination that the Jordans have come out with that just fit you, your style, and that you're just like, yeah, any day of the week, this color, this combination is mine. And then I want to hear about a funky pair that you have.
I love the original colorway stuff just because it's, they do a lot of variations that are pretty cool too, but the original colorway stuff is my favorite just because it's like restoring an old car back to original. It's like, just show me what it looked like when it came out in 1988. That's what I want.
Yeah.
But I do collect anything orange. Like I showed you the Air Jordan 1s that I have that are orange. I probably have maybe 5 or 6 other pair of Jordans that are orange just because I like wearing them and I like connecting them and hooking up to whatever it is else I'm wearing that's brand related.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a part of me that just likes having them in the office to kind of surround myself with my own brand. That's one of the things that, since I started my business, orange is my color. That's my brand color. And if I can find a way to sneak it in there or sneaker it in there,
Yeah.
I do. Yeah.
Those are super cool shoes, by the way. Those are awesome. I wish everyone could see them. They are the coolest. Well, good. That's really cool. Now, is there a pair that is a little bit funkier? Like, do you have like a multicolor pair or anything like that?
I have some, probably more on like the Bo Jackson side, but I have a lot of Jordans, but I also have a handful of Bo Jacksons and a handful of Air Max 90s, if you know what those are. But some of those are pretty loud, like the neons, because obviously it was the 90s. But they're the neon colors and some of that.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it's coming back to a degree, so it's not that loud, but For me, it is. So yeah, I have a
The
few.
90s were good times growing up and everything was bold and bright. And I know we've talked about our love for the 90s and I feel like Jordans were a big deal in the 90s as well when we were growing up. It was a huge deal from what I remember.
Yeah, they were a huge deal, not only from just the product, but the apparel, the clothing, and the big thing I remember that I don't think they actually get enough credit for is the marketing. So like the things that they did with, like, when they brought Spike Lee in and they were doing the Mars Blackman commercials and he was kind of the hype man for the shoe, and like they did some stuff that
Yeah.
was like super creative, super fun. And I think everybody enjoyed it while it was happening, but it just didn't get the credit it probably deserved at the time, because it was some pretty unique stuff. Like there weren't commercials like that out there.
There weren't. I remember those commercials. Like to this day, I remember those commercials. And that's just one of those iconic commercials that you'll never forget. It's like
Yep.
yeah, it's really, really cool. So what do you think about the future of the Air Jordan company? Like, where do you think it's going? How do you think it's doing right now? And then what do you think it'll be like in the future? Do you think they'll make a lot of changes? Just kind of want to know your thoughts on that.
I think they're going to continue to do what they do, and it'll evolve. Like, from a style perspective, I think it's going to continue to evolve like the other brands within Nike and whatnot. But I think the big thing is that they've been able to sustain that retro love and that mindset, the sneakerheads and whatever, that I don't know when that bubble is going to burst, because they're continuing to re-release retro versions every year. And I remember when they first started doing it, it was maybe one or two pair a year. Now they'll do one a month, or multiple retro releases in a month. So I think as the flywheel and the momentum has continued to build on them, I don't know if there's an end in sight. I mean, I just think it's his relevancy and just the sneakerhead mindset, and just the way, when I was a kid, I don't know what it was like for you, but when I was a kid, you got like one pair of shoes for school, and you maybe got one for sports or basketball or whatever, but that was it. They don't have as many shoes as I do, but they have more shoes than I ever had when I was a kid.
Oh yeah. Like I was the same way. You had like your school shoes and you had your sports shoes, and that was it. And then, for women, it was a little bit different with like heels and stuff, but
Yep.
yeah, we didn't have like a gajillion pairs of shoes. Not
Nope.
like today. And no way would I have ever dropped $150 just on a pair of sneakers. It just wasn't like that.
And whether or not my shoes hooked up to my t-shirt,
Yeah.
nobody cared.
No.
Like if I'd have had that conversation with my dad, he'd have probably backhanded me. That would not have happened. And like when I'm around my extended family, my nephews, whatever, like they'll come home for the weekend with 3-4 pairs of shoes.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
Yeah. That's crazy to me right now. Yeah. I never, ever, like, it wasn't even a thought that we would think about matching our shirt to our shoes.
No, it just wasn't an option.
It just wasn't a thing. No. That's crazy. That's so funny about your nephews and how they just can, have all these access to the shoes. That's good for them. That's great.
But I think it's so normal. Like all the kids have that now. And, and maybe some have more than others, which is another normal thing. But at the same time, I think that mindset is just kind of more common, where, that's why it's a little abstract, because I didn't grow up that way.
Yeah.
And I kind of promised myself at some point in life, man, when I can start to afford these shoes, I am going to buy a ton of them. And that's just kind of what I've been doing. So
yeah. I remember you would just wear like your athletic shoes until they were worn out, until like you were literally slipping and sliding around the court, and then you would get a new pair. So yeah, that's crazy. That's so cool that you have that awesome collection. And do you have like a place in your house where it's just like, this is my shoe room or something?
It'll be 2 years in August, but in my other house, I just had them squirreled away everywhere.
Yeah.
Like I literally would find them places, forget I had them, and they were just everywhere. They were in closets. They were downstairs. I don't want to say I was a hoarder, but like I just didn't have a system. Like I was just stuffing them places. And I kind of knew it was a problem. But then when I was packing to move, I just kind of one by one started to find them and pile them up, and was kind of getting ready put them in totes and kind of get them out the door.
Yeah.
And that pile was enormous. And there was probably, I don't know, there was probably 10 or so pair in there that I didn't even know I had.
Wow.
Like I'd open them up and I was like, oh my God, like, look at these. And I didn't even realize I had them because I bought them at some point, stuffed them in a closet and just forgot.
Yeah.
So now in my new house, there's a big walk-in closet that is intended, I believe, to be for like linens and pillows and that kind of stuff. That's the Jordan closet.
The sneaker closet. That's awesome.
Sneaker closet. And it goes, it's probably got like a 9-foot ceiling in it. So like they're stacked right to the ceiling, and they all fit barely. Like it's getting close where I might have to start thinking about plan B, but right now they all fit.
Would you ever like sell a pair of your shoes?
I'm going to say yes in theory, but I don't know. It's kind of like, I don't know. It first of all, it'd have to be a pair I have multiples in. And second of all, it would have to be somebody who understands what they are.
Okay.
Because if they're literally like, I'm going to wear them to the bar or whatever, I'd be like, no, you're out. Like, I'm not going to give them to anybody who doesn't get it. Put it that way.
Have you met like other sneakerheads like yourself that are just all about, Jordans or sneakers just in general?
A couple, but like, the few that I know are more on the, they'll just kind of buy for the rarity and buy for the value that they think that they hold. And for me, I mean, I know they're worth something, but I just buy them because I love them. And that's what it's about. And I think I mentioned this before we got on the call, but
yeah, absolutely.
Like I love the feeling of getting the package and looking at the brand new box. And then I open the box, I smell them. Like I go through this whole process every time. And it's like, it's like my own little personal time machine. So that's the process for me. So like I said, if somebody said, hey, I want to buy those shoes from you, I just have to know that they understand that.
Yeah.
Or they have to love them. I don't know. If that makes sense?
Yeah, that totally makes. Does it always, like when you get that new pair of Jordans, does it always take you back to like when you were growing up and you bought your first pair, or like how you felt when you were able to afford those shoes?
Yeah, absolutely. And it actually takes me back to what I didn't even know I remembered.
Really?
So when they re-release some of these, sometimes the packaging it's retro inspired, but it's not exact. Not that I don't like it, but I will open them up and go through the process and be like, oh man, these are awesome. But there have been a few pair where they have retro released them to the original specs of the shoes, the packaging, whatever. And when I open those up, I'm like, oh my God, that's the same paper that they used in, because I'll remember it. And I didn't know I remembered it until I had it in front of me again.
Yeah.
And those were pretty cool, cool pairs that I was able to get my hands on. But yeah,
that's so cool how like a brand or something as simple as a pair of tennis shoes can take you back to all those memories and just make you smile. Like that's super cool that brands have an effect on us like that. That's awesome. That's really cool.
One of the things that I think I like about the whole Jordan thing, the sneakerhead thing, and how it pertains to me personally is that, and I don't know that I intended it to be that way, but it's definitely become a pillar or a supporting mechanism in my own company and my own brand and my own identity, because I don't know, I didn't, so you get dressed every day, you go do your thing. I don't leave the house wondering how many people are going to pick up on the nuances of what I'm wearing, not wearing, whatever. I just don't. I don't know that anybody does. But over the course of, years of doing this, it's amazing how many people pick up on the fact that, oh my God, you're always wearing this, or I love the way you connect this to this. And I'm like, I didn't know the fashion police were, always on the lookout. But when they start to kind of paint that picture of you and they start to create that identity for you, now all of a sudden it's feeding into the brand. And now all of a sudden it's feeding into this, kind of this deeper meaning behind it. It's just awesome. And I don't know that I planned it that way, but I'll take it.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. And people do. I mean, it's just how we are, people look at what you dress and then just kind of, make assumptions from there, or they either are like, oh man, this guy's wearing Jordans every time I see him and I see a new pair every time. This is cool. This is a cool guy. He's, this is who he is and what he likes. And I think it's a great way to kind of show our personal styles and what we love.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's really awesome.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that I need to know about Jordans? If you're like, because I want to know it.
I think the big thing that I don't even know if this really explains it, but the sneakerhead culture obviously it's a big thing, and it's probably even bigger in, your metro areas like New York City, Chicago, whatever, because I just think there's the population density probably helps, but it's a bigger thing. There are retro, straight up retro Jordan Nike stores where you go in there and you're paying thousands of dollars for certain styles or certain pairs of shoes. And then obviously your P Diddy's and your all these celebrities who collect shoes, they've definitely elevated the whole thing and kind of made it cool. But what I think's cool about the whole sneakerhead culture is it definitely aligns with the mindset of, people who collect, vintage albums, people who collect vintage cars, people who collect, they like to go to thrift stores because they like buying retro clothing. Like, I think all of that stuff, it's all kind of playing in the same spot. And I think sneakerheads gets a little bit different perspective on it because a lot of athletes, a lot of celebrities and whatnot are doing it. But to me, it fits right back in that kind of that retro mindset of people who just appreciate that. So the question where I go to with it is like, well, why is that? Do you just like old things? Do you like, what is that? And for me, it's about tapping into not only the joy and the whatever you like, what you like. So there's a little bit of a sensation there, but it's also tapping into that time and a place where, it meant something different to you. It meant something that was much bigger than you probably could have afforded or even realized at the time, because you didn't know what the next 35 years of your life was going to look like, So like when I got my first pair, like I had no idea that, if I could go back and tell a 13, 14-year-old Mike that you're going to have 100 and some pairs of Jordans in your life, I don't even know if I'd believe it. But when I was that age, to get that one pair, just to have one pair was so huge for me. And now that feeling, I get to replicate it and kind of do something different with it.
Yeah.
But the point of that is that it's coming back to square. It's coming back to that first spot. So to me, it is branding, it is marketing, it is retro mindset, because it's finding your way and navigating your way back to that place where you get to kind of feel it again. You get to start over with what it all meant to you, and you get to tap into that and kind of hit reset. I'm just one of those guys who really geeks out about that stuff. So it's easy for me. It's easy for me to get excited about stuff like that. But like with my clients, sometimes whatever life threw at them, maybe they're just not wired like I am. They can't get there. So to help people get there and to even use Jordans as an example, or to wear the Jordans, so it starts off as a conversation starter or an icebreaker where they can go, oh my God, you're excited about this. It opens the door for me to kind of have that conversation with them about, well, what excites you? Why did you start your company? What are you doing to, kind of infuse and inject that feeling into your life on a daily basis? Because why not? Why wouldn't you? Yeah,
absolutely.
So
that's the coolest. That just made me think about growing up and all of the things that I associate with growing up and just how brands can have that effect on you. Mike, that's like the coolest story ever. And I love that when you bought your first Jordans, like you worked for it and you saved and saved and saved. It was this huge deal. And you have this awesome memory tied to it. Like,
and under harsh scrutiny, like I remember to some degree having to be a chain breaker when I bought them, because everybody around me is like, you're an idiot. They're $100 and some. They're shoes. And I'm like, I don't care. Like, I want them that bad.
Yeah.
They mean that much to me. And whatever it was about them that really, excited me, like I just, beyond what everybody else was saying, I was like, I'm just going to do this. I don't care what happens.
That's awesome. That's the coolest. So look, now you have this awesome collection and you're a sneakerhead, and people like associate you with those shoes. It's really cool.
Yeah. Well, even some of my family, like the ones who thought I was an idiot for buying them in the first place are the ones now that like say, hey, tell them about your shoes. Like they're like half proud of it. I'm like, funny how that changed.
Yeah. That's so awesome, Mike. That's so, so cool. Well, is there anything else that I must know about you or the Jordans in general?
I think the leave behind, if we're going to put a fork in this, I think the leave behind is, what is that for you? Throughout this podcast, the different episodes we're going to do, the different conversations we're going to have, I'm going to make a lot of references about what it is for you. I personally have several. I think everybody probably has several, but they got to think about it. But what is that for you? Was it the Barbie dream house? Was it the Easy Bake Oven? Was it the Castle Grayskull? Was it like, I don't know, maybe you had a horse, a pony, I don't know.
Yeah.
But everybody's kind of got something. And the goal is to get that mindset to be like, oh my God, that was an amazing time. That was an amazing feeling. And then can you replicate that? Can you find that in your daily process of, how you got to where you are, how you got to the point of starting a business, creating a brand, or taking that leap to become an entrepreneur? Because it's in there. I mean, everybody goes through it. The day you decide to be an entrepreneur, quit your job and wake up the next day, it's debatable, but you're either unemployed or self-employed.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
That's a gut check like you'll never have in your life.
And I know it. Yeah.
You got to remember what that feels like, because it's liberating.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you think that like you loving Jordans, how do you think that gives you a feeling in what you do today? How can you relate those things, like you said?
I think the biggest thing is to some degree, it's just like not necessarily listening to the noise or not caring.
Yeah.
Look, kind of like I said, when I bought my first pair, a handful of people around me are like, you're an idiot. They're $100 shoes. And I'm like, I don't care. I'm buying them. And I worked for it and everything worked out fine. But even like when I was going to quit my full-time employment to start my own business, a handful of people around me like, dude, you're an idiot. You have a great job. You've got benefits. You've got all this stuff. And I'm like, I don't care. I'm going to do it anyway. And just being able to kind of look inside yourself, decide what's important, and make a decision regardless of the outcome, because we all get to make choices. We all get to try things. And you know what? If this whole business thing doesn't work out, I'll figure something else out. That's what you got to remember. So like, it's about being to some degree an individual, but to some degree not caring. Not that I don't care what people think, but when it comes to the decisions I make for my life, my business, the things that make me happy, I just got to be okay with them. Not everybody's going to like what I like. I have friends that give me a bad time about, what are you, 12? You're wearing Jordans. And I'm like, yeah, totally.
I am 12.
Yeah, if I can be a younger version of whatever it is myself is, that's more optimistic and more positive and more inspiring to the older version of myself to keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah, rock on. I'll do it.
Yeah.
I don't care.
That's awesome. That's so cool.
So
that makes me think like, hey, I need to make sure just to not, we all care what people think. We can say like, I don't care what people think, but we all do. I mean, come on, we all do. But that's a great way to think about it, is like, this is what makes me happy and this is what I'm going to do and nobody's going to stop me.
Well,
I love that.
And some of it's just, weighing do I love Jordans more than I love this person's opinion? Absolutely. So I'm going to wear the Jordans. Am I going to, and it's making life decisions, making decisions for your brand. One of the things I talk about a lot with clients is don't evolve just for the sake of evolving. Don't let the pressures of the white noise or the pressures of the people on the fringe force you to come out of your comfort zone or make you feel like it's time to evolve because they're saying it. That doesn't mean anything.
Right.
You have to stay in the pocket and stay in the box and be able to stay in touch and connected to your brand. And then when you're ready, that's when your brand evolves. So when I'm ready to move out of the Jordan phase, I'll let you know, but I'm not ready. I'm not ready.
Yeah. That's so awesome. That's so awesome. That's a great message. Just be who you are.
Thank you for hopping on here. I do have this conversation more probably than I like, but it's interesting to get somebody who's interested in it and ask questions and wants to learn more.
Yeah,
So,
I've learned a lot. It's super cool, Mike. I think what you're doing is awesome. I think you being a sneakerhead is awesome. And I love what you said about marketing and bringing that in and having those memories to those brands. It's really cool. It was an absolute pleasure to talk to you.
yeah, well, thank you very much, and we will talk again.